The primaries are over. Will it get even nastier in November? Next. Welcome to the Stan Simpson Show, a program about Connecticut people and compelling issues. Make it a point to drop in every week. We're having some problems here on the camera. Hey, folks, that's what the primaries are over, and this much is sure. Either former Stamford Mayor Dan Malloy or Greenwich businessman Tom Foley will be the next governor of Connecticut. But just how ugly will it get in the general election? We'll talk to Hartford Current columnist Rick Green and former Hartford City Councilman John Kennelly, once a rising star in local politics, about how the November elections shape up and who has the edge. In our second segment, we'll talk to scholar, author, and comic book aficionado Bill Foster about the evolving images of African Americans in comic books and how those images reflect attitude changes about race in society. Then we'll wrap things up with news about Fantasia, Queen Latifah, and Wyclef Jean. Our entertainment attorney James Walker joins us for some walk talk. But first, we're talking politics, joined here by current columnist Rick Green, John Kennelly, rising star in politics. Whispers are he's back on the rise now. We'll talk about that later. All right, this thing's over. Primary's done. Dan Malloy, Tom Foley. Interesting matchup. A guy who's run a government, a guy who's run business. How does this thing shake out? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think it's interesting, Stan, that you have Dan Malloy making a big deal of we don't need CEO-style leadership. Certainly Foley's coming in offering CEO-style leadership. So there's going to be a real distinct contrast there.
Why is CEO-style leadership bad?
In an age where the biggest concern of all voters is the issue of jobs, CEOs and Wall Street have gotten some real negative connotations. And therefore, if people are worried about either getting a job or keeping their job, CEO leadership is kind of a buzzword for, or a substitution for somebody who may fire you, cut your hours back, or get rid of you.
Mm-hmm. Is that a bad thing? I mean, Tom Foley's a takeover specialist. He goes in there, he cuts the fat, he gets a profit, and he walks out with a big chunk of change in his pocket. Is that a bad thing right now with Connecticut?
And look what we've gotten from political leadership in Connecticut, in Hartford, for the last 5 or 6 years. Maybe we do need a strong CEO. I don't know, but to argue that we need a politician at the top, I don't know. The record's there.
Truth be told, I think you like this guy, Green. I saw your column way back. We introduced him. Something about him, you liked in that first column.
I like somebody who's willing to say no. I don't know if he's the guy, but I think we need somebody in the governor's office who can say no to the Democrats, no to the Republicans, no to the public employee unions. I think it's going to be a tough job.
Well, Rick, what you're really talking about is leadership.
Okay. Yeah.
Not so much about CEO leadership. The government, either be city, town, or state, isn't in the business of making a profit. But you do need, and I agree with Rick, that there needs to be a real buck stops here, starts to be attitude over, on Prospect Street in the mansion, or the capital of the executive office, because we haven't seen that. We've had, this kind of grandmotherly, I don't want to make too many waves, you guys work it out, I'll criticize from the sidelines. I think all the voters, Republican, Democrat, have gotten sick of that, and we will see a change in that sort of leadership. But I don't agree that what we need is CEO leadership.
Mm-hmm.
What I agree with you absolutely is that we need real leadership.
Well, it seems to me that real leadership starts with how do you create jobs, right? At the end of the day, whoever wins this thing is the one who can convince the electorate that they can create jobs. This state's an aging state. Jobs are a huge problem. What's the case to make for Tom Foley as a job creator? And then we'll talk about Dan Malloy in 1 second. If you're Tom Foley's camp, what's the case to make that you can create jobs?
Well, I mean, I guess he's going to say that he's acquired and run these businesses over the years, and that he's going to bring that attitude, that bottom line attitude, to Hartford.
Mm-hmm. If you're Dan Malloy, what's the case to make? You run Stamford?
You say that, I was a leader in Stamford, that I took Stamford, increased its economic viability to places like New York, that I revamped the downtown, that I understand the big projects, and at the same time I understand how they work in a regional manner in creating an attractiveness to it. Now I'm going to do it with the state. I'm going to make us attractive to other businesses in Rhode Island and Massachusetts and New York. I'm going to bring jobs here. But what either of them have to do, and I've found to be just one of the most embarrassing things, is we have not been taking advantage of federal dollars that were for job training, for new projects, for shovel-ready things.
Why is that? Who's to blame for that?
The executive. No doubt about it. The governor's office, the executive branch of this government, either one of these could create jobs by just having some better grant writers, to be quite honest.
Baggage. Go ahead, Rick Edson.
Well, I was just going to say Stanford. I mean, much as I'm tired of hearing about Stanford, you know, Malloy, you can't visit Stanford and not see a city that's really come a long way. And I think that's going to be a huge asset when the Democrats are going to be hitting Foley on, you know, his South Carolina business that he, allegedly drove into the ground. I mean, I think Stanford is something we can all get a hold of. And
pound for pound, Dan Malloy, I said it a long time, most impressive guy of all the bunch as far as his resume. Yet, until we got to this point, he couldn't get his image out of Stanford. And also the mayors didn't endorse him. What an enormous slap in the face that his fellow mayors didn't endorse this longtime mayor. So what's the deal? What's the baggage with Dan Malloy?
I think Rick would agree with me. None of us are surprised that DeStefano did not endorse Malloy. Okay, there's been bad blood for 4 years from that.
What's the knock on Dan Malloy? I've heard that he has sharp elbows. What's the knock among the mayors with Dan Malloy?
Well, I know that, you know, Eddie Perez had been a backer of his and then flipped over to the Malloy, or to Lamont. I think that was a bigger part of the Row B plan that was going on around in some parts of the state. Bridgeport, you know, there's sometimes with familiarity breeds contempt. There's Stanford right there. There's Bridgeport right there. And I think some of the political machines and the mayors had some clashing over the years.
So good old-fashioned political hating.
Yes.
All right.
I would. I would agree. And you know where it got him? 16 points down.
2 minutes. These negative ads, guys. Low turnout, 30%. Everyone's wringing their hands. These political ads were nasty. They were mean-spirited. They were wrong, all of them. Your thoughts on, they got really into the gutter, from calling people racist to calling people corrupt. Your thoughts on the ads?
Look what they did for Lieutenant Governor Fideli. They brought him within 3 points of Foley.
Look what happened to Oz Grable. From like single digits to 17 points. I think people got tired of the other two fighting, and Oz Grable rose to like 17 points.
Look at the attack ad that Malloy had. I mean, I like them or not, I think they work.
Exactly.
There's no doubt about that.
Well, but they work. But do people get turned off and say, you know what? I'm not getting involved with this nonsense.
If you win three, if you lose one vote, but you also got three, and that's the difference. The biggest lesson I'll tell you I learned from this is that public financing works. That it is important to have people get a chance. They need $2.7 million when you're fighting against somebody who's $9 million to have the voice on the mass media to get out there. The second lesson I learned is that if you do get the public financing, go negative, because that's the way to win. I want you use the example I was going to use: Fideli against Foley, Malloy taking Lamont. It's absolutely so obvious. And we had the most amount of contested races in the history of the state of Connecticut at the same time: 10 primaries and constitutionals, all these House and Senate races, and yet we had the lowest turnout in years, 20%. And what I take from that, I'm sorry, I'll let you speak for the rest of it. What I take from that is that we have the wrong date.
Okay.
Yeah, I agreed there. But do you think Blumenthal and Linda McMahon are going to be talking about the issues?
That's going to be a battle royal, right?
The Vietnam service of Blumenthal. We got World Wrestling with Linda McMahon.
That could be historically nasty, that one. That one's shaping to be a very nasty, ugly campaign, correct?
Exactly.
And very well funded on both sides.
Both sides.
All right, so let's segue now to Hartford. All right, new mayor, Pedro Segarra, sort of getting his feet wet. Former Councilman John Kennelly, once a rising star, a guy who may be backing out in the mix. What's your take so far, Mr. Segarra, on the heels of...
My take on Mr. Segarra is that I've known him for many years. I knew him when he was corp counsel of the city of Hartford. I knew him as a private attorney. I have a huge amount of respect. He has a great challenge ahead of him. He's going to have to make some tough decisions regarding the budget shortfall that's coming up next year, and really where there's going to be any vision for the city of Hartford. One of the examples that I really hope he just attacks, or not attacks, at least gets his hands into, is the One City, One Plan, which is this idea for the whole city and how development in the city is going to occur. And if you read the details of it, it still talks about developing the Constitution Plaza. And it talks about literally every project that has been going on since my grandfather.
Well, one good sign, the butt ugly building is going to come down. The city now buys that. They're going to bring that sucker down.
He's got to show that some things can work here. Yeah. I think there's this perception around Hartford that nothing works here, whether it's taking down a building or stores on Front Street or something. They got to show the area that some things can succeed in Hartford.
In 15 seconds, John Kennelly again. Once a rising star, top vote getter, you had some of your butted heads with the Mayor Perez. You were on the outs. A lot of whispering that if indeed Mayor Segarra decides not to run 18 months, that John Kennelly may have put his toe back in the water. Where are you right now as far as looking at the future for yourself?
I'm certainly talking to members, heads of community groups. neighborhood, family, friends, businesses, industries here in the city of Hartford.
So you are thinking about it?
Yes, I am. And I'm talking to them and saying...
You want to announce right now and let people know you're...
What I'm doing over these next couple of months, and I've been doing it for a couple of months, is getting a feel that could my leadership add value to the city of Hartford? Okay. Do people feel like my style, my manner, my training, would all of that mesh well with what the city needs right now? I think it could. But I'll need to talk to more people and get their feel for where they think I could best serve the city of Hartford.
Including Mom, Barbara Kennelly. Can you talk to her?
I talk to her very often, and I will tell you she is much wiser than me in so many different ways. But she certainly agrees with me that there needs to be, that I need to go out there and find out if it's a good fit and how, in whatever capacity.
All right.
But whatever best fit for serving the city of Hartford and providing some leadership.
Well, the bottom line is you are definitely thinking about it. So we break a little news here today.
Yes.
We love doing that every now and then. All right, folks. He's John Kennelly. He's Rick Green. When we come back, we'll talk to a scholar, author, and comic book aficionado about the changing images of African Americans in comic books. You are watching The Stan Simpson Show.